Hi everyone, welcome. As you can see from the information board, the worms we're feeding today, they're night crawlers, they're African night crawlers, 243-day-old systems. They're sort of twin bins, two systems launched on the same day with the same estimated worm count, been getting fed on the same days, the same things, so they're probably pretty alike. But I guess we'll get to see that as we press on and get them fed. The stuff they got last time included bread. All the other stuff that they got, stuff like broccoli and pumpkin bits, I would have to assume probably all got eaten, but and there was some coffee and some worm chow. Look at all these wormies hanging out here. But I'm curious about the bread. Sometimes bread takes a little bit to get going before the worms can start eating the stuff. Sometimes it just sits there and turns into mold. So I'm curious to see how the worms are doing on the bread. Hopefully they're into it and eating it. Perhaps it's already even gone. So these top coverings were all deployed brand new last time, which is good. I don't have any more stuff like this set up and ready to go. So no coffee filters to replace feeding zone indicators. So it's a good thing that the ones that we put in here, how long ago now? 11 days ago? I think the last feeding was 11 days ago. Okay. It's interesting. Did I not write that down? Sometimes that is one of the bits of info that I come down here prepared with, and I didn't even, at this point, recollect from talking about them where we stand as far as when we last fed them. For some reason, though, 11 days sounds about right. And I'm seriously doubting that we're going to see any pumpkin bits left over. Or broccoli. But bread I would not be too surprised about. What's this? Oh, you know what this is? A piece of corn cob. There was another piece or two over here. Last time we did experiment with the corn cob in these bins, or at least in this bin. Oh yeah. This is the stem of a pumpkin, really making great progress, and last time I pressed on it a little bit too hard and I took a big chunk out of the thing. This is probably the chunk. Let's keep it together. Certain things just take a while if you don't interfere with the breakdown process. Corn cobs are one of those things. Pumpkin stems are another one of those things. So I want to make a nice big hole here to put today's feeding into. I do want to be really generous on the bedding today. I did notice how this system just seemed like it had a lot of available real estate in it as far as, room to grow, making up better use of the available space in the system, pushing things a little bit closer to their limits. Okay, let's get these worms off my glove and fetch their bedding. I think last time we did grab maybe at least a handful of this stuff that goes in as my prepared bedding in most cases. And after only a few days or a couple weeks, like what happened here, we would come back but almost always find residual leftovers of this stuff floating around. But here it seems like they did quite a number on this stuff. So those first two handfuls didn't seem like I was really kind of at capacity, so I grabbed the third handful and couldn't resist grabbing a big one. So we did grab a little bit more material, I think, than we initially thought we would be putting in here for the bedding. So yeah, some of this stuff is, I think maybe we'll grab another piece or two. Some of this stuff is really getting nasty. And I did allow it to thaw out a little bit too, so it's been in the house here for At least an hour, I would say. I bought it in from the freezer that's out in the garage earlier, and then I got sidetracked on one or two other things, but now that we're back to feeding, this stuff has started to melt a little bit, thaw out, but I think we've got ourselves a fairly decent split here on giving both systems an equal quantity of cabbage leaves. Another thing we'll often include in our feedings is some coffee. So in goes a little bit of this used coffee that I've got here, collected up, and I'm also going to drop in a little bit of, you know what? Let's do this. Usually I put the that worm chow straight into the coffee. Maybe what we'll do is we'll make it even more interesting, is we'll kind of force it to sift through another little sprinkle top layer of bedding material before it lands in the coffee. That should make this feeding area into a really tempting place for the worms to come out and hang out in. And I think we've done a really good job boosting up the overall amount of bedding in here. So we've got a little bit of leftover stuff here. I think we already threw the corn cob we encountered earlier back down. Here's another one. But I think most of the old foods we bumped into are back in now. Here's the pumpkin stem, trying not to be too rough with it. Old guy. Put a big break in it last time from being too rough with it. And just trying to avoid busting the thing up. Just keep it intact if possible. And let it break down on its own, just based on the worm activity and not me helping it. So the only other stuff that we collected in the very beginning was stuff that was out near the edges, didn't get to remain moist. It sort of got exposed to the air a bit and dried, making it a little bit barren of any worm activity there for a few days. So it seems only fair to get it back down in the action, let it get back to work. Okay, I'm just gonna trust that the outer edges of this system are doing good. A lot of times I'll go in there and I'll sort of till up the outer edges just to see how things out there look, but I've been doing that pretty consistently in all my systems, making sure that everything's healthy, and I've got a feeling everything's good in here, so we don't probably don't need to check. Hopefully those are not my famous last words in this system. Come back to regret making that decision, but no, I think things look good here. Usually I'll just aerate until the outer edges of my systems too, just to make sure things are doing good, because in the past there had been stretches of time when I would just sort of neglect those outer edges for weeks at a time, and then you know, luckily, knock on wood, nothing ever happened bad as a result of me not doing that. But it does seem like a little bit of aeration every now and then can't hurt, if nothing else, but also just giving yourself an opportunity to take a peek in on how things are doing. All right, on to bin number 2. The system looks great. I think things are coming along very nicely. Onward. Well, hopefully we can go, you know, really generous on the bedding here too in this system. There does seem to be space enough for us to go in here thinking that way. Yeah, I think we got space enough to be super generous with bedding here too. Whether we're going to be able to fit 3 handfuls like we did in the other system or not, I don't know. But we'll try. That first piece of paper I just removed did feel like it was very fragile. Perhaps more so than what we saw in the other system. Coffee filter's holding out pretty good. All stuff we could certainly reuse. I don't know, I kind of like this idea of pulling together this slightly neglected material around the outer edges and including it down in the feeding area. Another corn cob bit just floating out on the surface. I usually try to return all the leftover foods that I encounter along the way back down into the middle of the bin to keep all the food items near where all the action's going to be. So sometimes I wonder why it's out on the surface. Here I think I'm already starting to see some leftovers of the bread we fed last time. It does seem like there's here's some corn. Over here, something that appeared like it could have been leftover bread. I even saw a little flash of the color orange, which means there was even maybe some leftover pumpkin. Well, you can't always have two systems that operate at the exact same pace, even though you might have them running with the same quantity of worms and being managed and fed the same exact way for months on end. There's always going to be little variations, I believe. So here too, I think we've opened up a nice enough hole to be able to come in here with a whole bunch of bedding and give them that delicious treat of cabbage leaves. Like we did before, we're going to come in with a good maybe 3 handfuls of material down here into the feeding area. And I kind of like that idea of layering stuff in, so maybe we could even do the same thing here where we sprinkle a little bit more bedding material in, combine it with the last 2 items that we're going to be adding, the coffee and the worm chow. Look at that. Some of that is really nasty. As it's thawing, it's getting all kind of mushier and gooier, the way you would kind of expect it to be. You know what? I've got a paper towel here. Perhaps using this paper towel is a good way to get all this juicy goodness right back down into the feeding area. That's where it belongs after all, no? Let's even leave that there. Okay. So I think last time too, we were about to sprinkle the worm chow in onto the coffee. But before doing that, we use that as an excuse for bringing in yet one more handful of my prepared bedding. You might have even noticed, if you're a regular here, how much more of a concentration of leafy material has been used in this particular batch. I did bring in a whole lot of screen leaves lately, so that kind of opened the door to being able to use a whole lot of it when I make my prepared bedding. You know what, all these recycled bits too, let's go get them down here into the feeding area. You'll remember in the beginning when we scraped up all that stuff that was kind of resting out on the surface, some of it even was dry. We collected all that up over here, so let's place that right down the middle too, where all the yummy foods are going to be getting attacked by the wormies. And I think we're done here. So we can just sort of level things off, bring all this stuff back in over the feeding area. I just prefer to cover the feeding area for some reason. A lot of people just come in with bedding and treat the bedding as covering it. I guess that would work too. Sometimes I'm just not as generous as I could be with the bedding. Although today I think we were pretty generous in both systems. Both systems got a nice shot of bedding. It even looks like we might have increased the overall amount of stuff in the bin by doing so. Well, you know how this stuff is. It's going to collapse and compress, so it won't be that way for long. So we can keep trying. Every time we come in here, we can try to be super generous with the bedding. I guess there will come a day when we'll probably want to back off of that and let them finish off what remains of that bedding material so that we can harvest their castings without it being littered with bedding bits. But for now, I think we're still in good shape to keep these little guys pressing on, and adoption of that new thinking down here and my wormery of trying to maximize the use of the space in these bins is kind of what's driving me towards wanting to be super generous on the bedding everywhere. And even if you're not trying to hit any sort of a goal or target or anything like that, it's just a good practice in general. So it's something everyone should do anyway. All right. That's pretty much it. I don't think those top coverings are going to last one more round after this. Next time we come in here, I think this stuff is going in as supplementary bedding. Yeah, but for now, we were able to squeak one more use out of this stuff, which was kind of cool. All right, everyone, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please, before you go, don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, that's all really appreciated. If you do those, I would really be thankful. But let me get out of here. Got some stuff to get cleaned up and put away. Take care.